Up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, wandering free, wish I could be part of that world.
It's safe to say that I've always been fascinated by mermaids. Since childhood, they've had this powerful draw. I watched a Disney film on VHS so many times to take more thing. But whilst mermaids are popular with many people like myself, who belong to the LGBTQ+ community, have a particular affinity to them. Why might that be? Mermaids are classically depicted as half human and half fish. Whilst you do get mermaids across the gender spectrum, such as the masculine Triton, the most classic depiction is of a beautiful nude woman with a fish-like tail. Mermaids exist around the world and throughout time, all with slightly different stories. Some of these go a long way back. So the goddess Atargatis was a Syrain deity with a fish tail, and therefore represents an ancient depiction of a mermaid. So her priestesshood would worship at a temple with a man-made pool filled with beautiful fish that you had to swim through. Now the priestesses that were assigned to this goddess, they were assigned male at birth, but would self-castrate and live their lives as women. They were respected as women. This carving is a depiction of an Atargatis priestess. Therefore, mermaids, as creatures of gender ambiguity, have a very long history. Mermaids, unlike their uglier cousins, the sea monster, represent the beauty as well as the danger of the sea. And they're also representing the sexual frustrations of sailors who, on being away from women for months and years at a time, would project their sexual fantasies onto the forms they might see swimming overboard. The mermaid is therefore not just beautiful, not just sensual or sexual, she is dangerous and also vain. She's often depicted holding a mirror, but in some of her stories, her role is not just to passively exist, but to tempt sailors to their death. In ancient Greece, you get these creatures called Sirens. Now in mythology, they were originally depicted as humanoid or even half bird. Now these creatures would sing a beautiful song, so beautiful it would tempt sailors to drown themselves. Now this mythology became mixed with that of mermaids, or as they were called in ancient Greece, naiads. These were often the daughters of the sea god Poseidon or Neptune. Now this created a blended creature with the look of a mermaid, but with some of the traits of the siren, a creature with a beautiful singing voice and a rapacious sexual appetite. Therefore, for many sailors, the mermaid was an important symbol, one connecting them to the sea, but also a popular tattoo design for its sexual elements. It is important to remember that within the maritime world, there were, for some, the opportunity to live a much more permissive lifestyle. Strange things happen at sea. Gay, bisexual, non-binary and trans people are known for having used a life at sea as an opportunity to live more freely. The punishment for same-sex relationships, as we can see from this, could be death. Whereas if you were lucky at sea, as long as you worked hard as part of your crew, you might be able to get away with it. Particularly within piracy, people could live as men despite the gender assigned at birth. The likes of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. These were pirates who had their own rules, and there were a different rule set acting at sea. Among pirates, there was even a kind of marriage ceremony which could take place between two men. Now, to this day, the sea and sailors have a deep cultural significance to queer people embodied in the mermaid. One of the stereotypes associated with living at sea, with being a sailor, is that of queerness. Now, for many of us, the most famous depiction of mermaids today is The Little Mermaid, a story written by Hans Christian Andersen. Now, Hans himself was a biromantic man. He fell in love with both men and women, and we can see this from his diaries. Now, he wrote the book after being rejected by a man of his affections, a man called Edvard Collin. Therefore, the writing of this half-formed, voiceless creature, the mermaid, who sacrifices everything to live in a different body, starts to maybe gain a clear queer symbolism, even in its origins. If you Google mermaids today, you will almost certainly see images from the Disney adaptation. Now, this also has a very strong LGBTQ connection. Many of the ideas for the film and the music were created by Howard Ashman, a gay man who tragically died of HIV shortly after working on The Little Mermaid. He also helped inspire the character of Ursula the Sea Witch. He based it on the drag queen Divine. So, without a gay man's fight for his life against HIV, we probably wouldn't have the full concept of Ariel and Ursula and Part of Your World. Disney even acknowledges this at the very end of Beauty and the Beast, the next film that Howard worked on, in a little thing that flashes up on the credits. One community this symbol, the symbol of the mermaid, most closely resonates with is that of the transgender community. Because mermaids are creatures of transformation. In the film, Ariel gets legs, right? She can live on land. Now, there's no coincidence the largest support network for young transgender people in the UK is itself called Mermaids UK. This is partly because of the love of many young trans kids with and for the mermaid myth. So mermaids are a story whose roots are deeply embedded in the experience of queer people and people whose gender identity didn't conform to the expectations of society. So many of us feel this strange connection and draw to these strange creatures. But remember that just like mermaids, whilst queer people can be intriguing and fabulous, we are not to be messed with.